Hi, my name is Nicole Thomas, and this video is part of my Capstone project for my Career 3 class. This video is a chance for me to discuss what my previous e-portfolio projects have taught me and helped me learn towards my field of study. My field of study currently is medical coding and reimbursement. And this is my last week and a half, so I'm pretty excited. I have a total of 5 previous e-portfolio projects that I plan on discussing, and then this would be my number 6 once I've turned it in for my final submission. My first project, is to demonstrate a professional level of understanding of medical terminology, anatomy, physiology, and pathophysiology, and pharmacology. This was actually one of the first couple of classes that I took, my first couple of semesters that I took. This was for my healthcare terminology class and my anatomy and physiology class. This one, I remember distinctly having to submit submit recordings of me practicing words and medical words and turning them into my teacher, and that was also one of the final projects, was to submit one of our recordings for our portfolio project. And then in my anatomy and physiology 2 class, we had to write 5 essays on different diseases. And this was actually really interesting to me. I learned a lot about the diseases that I had never really heard about. One of the diseases I specifically remember doing a paper on was on ALS, because it was one of those things that I had heard about for many years, but I actually really didn't know anything about it. So I really enjoyed that. And this class, these classes helped because as far as medical terminology goes, in the medical and coding field, this is something that I'm actually going to use on a daily basis. And other than just the general terms that I had already known, it was nice to get an understanding of other things, to where now that if I hear a term, I can hopefully figure out exactly what it is. And the project for my anatomy class, it was just an eye-opener as to what other diseases are out there and what exactly they bring to the table, and about cures. And it was also a really great way to learn a lot of medical terminology also. My next class was for my evaluation and management services, and this one was to correctly assign CPT-EM codes to services utilizing the CTP metrics, including the 1995 and 1997 CMS documentation guidelines. That's a mouthful. This was a 4-part project that consisted of correctly using evaluation and management codes, reviewing cases, and identifying components. This class was actually really hard for me because evaluation and management classes are actually, evaluation and management codes are quite difficult to learn because they are very rule-based, more than just regular coding. So it was nice to do this project because I was able to put the correct codes to the correct ENM codes, I guess. That class, like I said, was definitely a struggle, but I feel like the fact that I came through it and the fact that I passed showed me a lot of what I could do. It was definitely a perseverance thing, because there were times when I honestly felt like maybe I wasn't going to pass it. But doing the final project and passing it, and then actually passing the class, was a huge relief. I'm still not fully understanding of EMN codes, but I like knowing that I have a step in the right direction and that I can identify to a point exactly what I need to do. This is something, though, that I know I will continually work on, and hopefully once I actually get a job in the field will help me a lot to finish learning about it. My next class was, my next portfolio was for the diagnostic coding for physician services. This one was to assign current diagnostic codes according to the American Hospital Association standards and sequencing rules for inpatient and outpatient medical services. This project was 2 small projects. This consisted of drugs, the table of drugs and chemicals, and then I also had to correctly identify symptoms and codes in a group of different scenarios. The table of chemicals and drugs is huge, and there is a lot of stuff packed in there. This is where medical terminology definitely came back into play, because all of the different actual medical names for different items came back into play. And then also it was the studying of adverse effects, or whether it was a accidental overdose or a purposeful overdose, if somebody was underdosed, if it was an accidental allergic reaction. So this actually was extremely educational, because it was things that I hadn't thought about before, and these codes actually go along with any other medical codes for something. It helps explain why exactly somebody came in and needed a reversal for an overdose. So it explains that they purposely overdosed themselves. And then, like I said, I also had to correctly identify symptoms and codes in a group of different scenarios. And that just, again, was along the lines of helping me look through my book, find the correct codes, and then on top of that, I also had to find the correct codes in the table of chemical and drugs, just to explain why that previous code was there. My next project was in coding practicum, and it was in the physician coder, and that was to assign current procedure codes according to the American Hospital Association standards and sequencing rules for inpatient services. This was a group of 3 different coding sections, and this was, again, just a bunch of different scenarios and sections where we had to look through the book and, again, assign the correct code or codes, and explain, or to help explain why that patient was having that current issue. This was helpful because, again, it's just going back through the book. It's going back and reiterating and relearning everything that you've already learned, and helping you to become accustomed to looking through the book and finding the correct codes. Because sometimes that's not easy, because the coding books are so big and there are so many things in there. So it helps to be able to consistently go back and find the correct thing. And you may find the correct code, but then you have to check that code, and that code may not be there, but you have to go hunt another code, or you might have to add extra letters because the code needed seven numerical letters, but there was actually only 4, so you have to be able to add on the extras. So it was really helpful in that sense. My last one was in healthcare terminology, and this was to employ strategies for reflection on learning and practice in order to adjust learning processes for continual improvement. And this was a two-part. The first part was a reflective essay on what I learned while in the course and what traits I could take from the class. And then the other was a recording of myself pronouncing medical terminology. This actually kind of goes in line with my first project, because my first class was in two different spots on my e-portfolio. And again, this was just the beginning of where I had to explain what I learned in the class, and how I could use it later on, and then also learning correct medical terminology. And like I said, coming from just a general understanding as an everyday person, learning all the medical language is extremely helpful, because obviously going into the medical field, I am going to need to know these things. And obviously my understanding of the medical terminology will hopefully only improve and grow once I am fully engulfed within that field on a daily basis. I have actually learned way more than I think I even would begin to realize through all these projects and what they have taught me. Sometimes it's actually hard to fully understand everything that I have learned, just because it's been so much so fast. I don't even know if I could tell you offhand every single thing that I have learned while in my college career. So it's going to be really interesting once I graduate and I go into the medical field, whether it is straight into being a coder or doing billing, or even just doing patient services, because that's an entry-level place and I need to get experience. It's going to be amazing to see what I do recall and what I pull out of my brain. And the Capstone project has been definitely interesting also, because I do not like public speaking and I do not like being on video. So having to do this has definitely brought me out of my shell. It's taught me to talk about myself, which is also something I struggle with daily, especially in interviews. So it'll be nice to get feedback, and it has been nice to get feedback from my classmates and see what I can improve on and see how to make things better. I guess that's about it. So if you could please review this, I would appreciate it. Thank you so much and have a great day.